Welcome to Northport, gateway to Washington Island and home of the Washington Island Ferry Line. Hi, I'm Julian Hagen, singer, songwriter, and full-time island resident. Washington Island is rich in history and natural beauty. Come discover this magical place. It all starts right here. Get on board, I'll show you around.
Modern-day ferry transportation, similar to what we have today, really began in the middle 1920s. A man named William Jepson had two wooden ferries. There had been a couple of other operators just prior to that using wooden hulled freighters to carry maybe one or two or three automobiles. Jepson was the first to build a ferry simply for automobiles and passengers. The first one was the Welcome in 1929. During that period of time, in the early 1930s, father and son, Carl and Arnie Richter, were commercial fish wholesalers. They were asked by other fishermen if they would be interested in hauling the catch from the island to the mainland, and they agreed to try to do that because there was no winter ferry service. They began with cutting the Welcome, their small fish tug, out of the ice, skidding it across the harbor where they could drop it in the water and then carry fish to the mainland.
They also, in the early 1930s, picked up had the U.S. mail contract, which also included hauling mail across the ice if the conditions warranted. That caused them to look for bigger boats, and at the same time, Bill Jepson was looking to sell. They bought his boats and kind of melded the two together. They also had a contract to exchange personnel for the Coast Guard, both on Plum Island and Pilot Island, changing out crews year-round. Both stations were manned year-round at that time.
And it wasn't until right after World War II that they were able to build a steel-hulled ferry, and that enabled them to operate in ice in the wintertime. Gradually, other steel-hulled ferries were added. The C.G. Richter in 1950, capacity of 9 automobiles. The Voyager in 1960, which was the first open deck ferry, which now had a capacity to carry some large trailers. And then the Arabaki 1970, Robert Noble in 1979, the Washington 1989, the Arnie J. Richter in 2003, and we now have 4 ferries. The 2 oldest were sold, and we operate on a year-round basis with those ferries.
The typical July and August schedule consists of 3 boats running full-time to carry the schedule of the summer. So we're probably upwards of, it's got to be 26 trips total for a Friday for the dead peak season. And that's only on the schedule. That doesn't mean that, that the 4th boat, the Arabaki, doesn't get thrown into the mix if the line is long. So it depends on traffic. You know, you want to see that 4th boat running, and that's good. That means there's people wanting to come up here. So what do we got on here right now? 48 passengers, 48 adults, 8 children, 16 vehicles, 1 trailer, 13 bicycles, and a bicycle trailer. So that's a pretty typical load.
Our ferries make 3,000, 3,500 round trips a year. 25
round trips per day. Right now in summer, because of tourism, the need to get a lot of commodities and people and vehicles back and forth. That gradually reduces in the fall to the point we're down to 2 round trips per day in the winter, which is really for essentials. Our island population then is just over 700 people. So it's mail, UPS, FedEx, building materials.
We use the Arnie J. Richter as the only ferry in the winter months. January, February, and March, consisting of 2 trips a day. And it takes all day to do those 2 trips. Washington Island, you know, along with Rock Island, Detroit Island, and everywhere else, had very similar weather and climates, and the fishing was very similar to what Iceland is, and that's why they came here. And that's why the one ferry is named Arabaki. It's the name of a village on the shore of Iceland where the settlers came from. So the Arnie Richter named it Arabaki in honor of the heritage.
There is a bow and a stern. They do look like a box, but there's a bow and a stern. And of course the rudders are on one end, so they need to maneuver, so they're headed out the channel. The pilot is looking forward, except when we get to the opposite shore, and it depends how the traffic was loaded, but then we'll back that ferry in and unload, discharge the traffic, load up again, and then when we get to the island, then they, in theory, shouldn't have to turn again. But It'll depend. I mean, they're all versatile, and all the captains are able to do this. And you spin the boat around and back it in, and it's just part of the routine.
And there's touchdown. We just leave her clutched in, push against the dock with the propellers and the engines, and unload and reload, and we got about 13 minutes to do all that and get out of here. So it's a very high pressure day when you're trying to maintain a schedule. It's not uncommon to have 80, 90, 100 people on a boat, 20 cars, bicycles, mopeds, and to get here, unload all that, and reload and get out of here in 15 minutes, you're humping.
The island has many different facets to it, and I think we who work here realize how important the ferry service is to the rest of the island, and we take that responsibility very seriously.
Hey, you came! Welcome to Washington Island. Wasn't that a pretty ride? Well, there's a lot to see and do up here, so let's get started. There are 2 tours which leave from the ferry dock multiple times a day, the Terrie train and the Viking train. Both tours include the uptown shopping and dining area, the Farm Museum, and Schoolhouse Beach. The Terrie train also stops at Stavkirk and the Art and Nature Center. These 15-mile, 90-minute guided tours are the hassle-free way to see much of the island without worrying about directions. Stay at any stop along the way, and you can board the next train that comes along. One of the best ways to see the island is by bicycle. If you didn't bring yours, you can rent one at the ferry dock or at Island Rides Bicycle Rentals, located just down the road at Doorcross Inn. Either way, you'll enjoy the ride. Not only is a bike a great way to see the island, it's a safe way to travel too. No, there are no bike paths, but the roads themselves may seem like bike paths. On an island with 35 square miles to explore, there are over 100 miles of paved roads. Off-season, from November through May, you're sharing this beautiful place with just over 600 people. In season, the island population grows substantially, but you wouldn't know it by the traffic on the back roads. Like any other rural location that attracts tourists, most stay on the main arteries of Main Road and Jackson Harbor Road. In between those 2 roads and on the outlying roads closer to the shoreline, the island traffic is notable for being largely absent. If the main ferry dock is in the southwest corner of the island, in its northeast corner is Jackson Harbor, 8 miles across the island. A former fishing village, the Jackson Harbor area still has remnants of a vibrant past, including the commercial fishing vessels unloading fish and preparing for a day on the water. Today, Jackson Harbor retains the quaint look of a past century with working docks, boats, restored buildings, and the Jackson Harbor Maritime Museum. The museum features Coast Guard, ferry line, and shipwreck displays, and photography and videos about local maritime history. Washington Island is the gateway to another island, Rock Island State Park. You get there by riding the sweet little ferry called the Carfee.
Everything that we see as Rock Island now is a state park. We're small, but we're really unique in that we don't allow vehicles or even bicycles on the island. Everybody that comes here walks through the trees, and we have the Rock Island Woods State Natural Area with an area of 700 acres is basically uncut. And the biodiversity of the island, because of our location, is absolutely magnificent. There's lots and lots of rare flowers and things that we have because of our environment along the lake, as well as the old mature growth forest.
When we go out to take walks in the forest, it is the quiet we pay attention to. And it automatically silences people just by being out there in the quiet. When they come here and see this effort by Thordarson to visualize some meaningful past experience that he had as an Icelander in his youth, trying to build something, and the paradoxes that he brought here, because at one point he wanted to preserve the island, and on the other point he wanted to completely change it.
Chester was a man of means at the time because he had demonstrated how to build high voltage transformers. Not to mention that Chester was a man of vision and an actual genius when it came to the electrical field. He had over 100 patents to his name, and others had said that had he wanted to be a rich man, a powerful man, his company easily could have surpassed the company we know called GE or General Electric. Through the efforts of a lot of the hard work of the local people, Chester's estate was sold to the state of Wisconsin for a mere, I believe they sold it for about $175,000 in 1965. It cost way more than that to build just the boathouse. So the boys lived up to Chester Thordeson's wishes to keep it all intact. They kept it all in one piece, and the state was able to buy this and make it into the crown jewel of the park system. We're sitting on the west steps of the Potawatomi Lighthouse on Rock Island. And the history of this lighthouse goes way, way back. The original one was built in 1836. And so this thing is really built. The walls are 30 inches thick or better out of stone. It's more like a castle or a fortress. All the stone was cut locally. The guys knew what they were doing. They carefully cut it out of the cliffs here and milled it to size, dug the foundation down to the bare bedrock, which is, in this case, just a few inches under the dirt. The original lighthouse keeper here was David Corbin, and he lived alone on the island. There were quite a few families of Potawatomi Indian that lived here, but he was the only European. Through the years, various keepers served here. Sometimes it would be a husband and wife. More often it would be two families. The lighthouse served admirably through the years until about 1946 was the last family that was here, and it was decommissioned at that point and became battery operated. Basically it sat vacant until 1989, at which time the Friends of Rock Island decided it needed to be restored, and they began the long, arduous process of acquiring fens, stripping out the lead paint, stripping every square inch, and totally restoring. It's an ongoing project, and every year we try to add a little bit to it. The new light is we call it the Erector Set Tower. It's about 150 feet straight west of where I am. Solar powered, got a battery, and about every 2 years the Coast Guard comes and checks on the service of that light.
We've caught something that is in a time warp, blending many different things. We have archaeological sites that go back 2,500 years, and then we have this that goes back to the Depression era, signifying man's footprint on Rock Island or on the Niagara Escarpment. And every time man lays his footprint on this, it has had an impact, and we have a microcosm of that impact. We have Indian ruins and these buildings, and we're trying to keep them intact. What the DNR hopes to do here is sort of capture this in time and not let radical change happen here anymore. We're trying to preserve it as it is without too much work on it, and I think people see that and expect it and respect it.
Barbecue is the fastest growing sport in the United States. It's surpassed NASCAR.
Barbecue is fun, and it's a family event.
It's very much a craze right now. The timing, I think, is perfect for this event and the enthusiasm that we've got in barbecue competition. It's very popular on TV. I'm sure everybody's heard of Barbecue Pitmasters and the Kingsford Challenge.
I was at the first, the inaugural event here on Washington Island, the Death Star Barbecue. One of 25 teams that competed, and it was just a phenomenal competition, really well organized and well run.
People have this vision of Washington Island as being very simple in that sort of old-fashioned, simple life kind of way, and cooking meat over a fire fits right into that.
It's already grown, 15%, 20% from last year. And who knows where this could go for the future. It could be bigger and bigger, and more that people enjoy it, they're going to want to come. So hospitality, hospitality, hospitality.
We coordinated with the Washington Island Ferry from the very beginning. They're our event sponsor. They have been phenomenal. Every team here has complimented the Ferry.
I held the first contestant over here on Wednesday. And the day that little smoker rolled over the boat, I was salivating over ribs.
We came across on the ferry, and it was a nice, cool breeze, and we got to the island, and it just kind of laid back a little bit.
Well, this is a good place just to get away. It's quiet. There's plenty of things to do. There's no hustle and bustle. It's a very relaxing atmosphere, and the teams really appreciate that.
Having this event in our backyard means I can take Luscious on the road very easily. We can come up for the weekend and be with the other 30 teams that are competing. It's a phenomenal opportunity for us.
We love it. It's a great competition. The people here couldn't be any nicer. We're treated like rock stars. It's a beautiful thing.
Last year, our judges came from 6 different states. And as far as the teams go, there's Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, and Indiana.
They travel long distances. They pay entry fees and what it costs them for their meat and all of that. So we try to do our best to be fair.
If you can get into the top 10 in all 4 categories, even if you were like 10th in all 4 categories, you've got a real good shot at winning the whole thing.
I keep track of every time they call your name for something. I think we have 30 calls over the years.
Last year we finished in the, we averaged a top 10 in 2 categories, which was excellent. The other 2, well, our ribs fell off the bone last year, and in competition, that's not a good thing.
When you think of all the variations between time, temperature, and the spices that are used, it's literally millions of combinations. And on any given day, any one of us can win out here. I'm hoping it's a log burner.
You have to be in all 4 in order to qualify for the Grand, and we definitely want the Grand. We're throwing everything we've got at it, every trick in the book.
The most important thing is when you come out to something like this, it's all about having a good time. You know, I mean, this is a fraternity of people out here. I mean, I know 80% of the people that are here, yes, you compete head to head. Of course you want to win.
It's a different dynamic because it's not like a prize fight where I'm trying to beat you. I'm sending a box in to 6 anonymous people who are tasting my stuff and judging it on their idea of what an ideal barbecue is.
Ribs used to be my favorite. Then pulled pork was my favorite, and I think now brisket's my favorite. But I really like them all.
Oh, brisket. Hands down, it's brisket.
Brisket, it's also the most challenging.
Toughest meat to cook. When it's done properly, it is just to die for.
I like the beef. You know, I think the brisket is definitely my favorite.
The pulled pork is my favorite to eat. It's just really moist and luscious.
Chicken is our best category, brisket second.
Baby back ribs, yeah. It's all about the sauce, no doubt.
I was raised on ribs and I'll die on ribs. Ribs is great.
One of the toughest things that the cooks face is the brisket.
Cooking it well and getting it done so it's nice and juicy, tender, flavorful when you're done.
It's either too dry or it's not, or it's overdone.
The easiest thing is a pork butt. It's full of fat, it's very forgiving. Who doesn't like pulled pork?
To me, the brisket is the toughest cut. The pork butts are the easiest for me. My chicken is pretty darn good, and I'm just crossing my fingers on my ribs because they whack me out.
Everything's a little bit different. You got to really be watching. You know, you can't just go back and take a nap.
It's the first time we've ever had 4 calls in the 4 categories. I guess every dog has his day, and today's ours. All of our winnings and all of the money from selling today goes for scholarships. We're going home with more than $2,000 for students for scholarships.
It's always a surprise to win a category because you have to get lucky and hit a table where they like your food, but everything was good.
Our motto is small but excellent. But we got feedback from the teams as to what they really liked, and one of the things that they really liked was the community feel of the event.
The whole barbecue thing, it's smoking.
Washington Island is very rich in history. A great place to start to learn about this is the Jacobson Museum. One of the world's strangest yet most charming one-room museums focuses on the natural and historical collections of early island resident Jens Jacobsen, who arrived from Denmark in 1881.
Being a farmer, walking behind a horse and plow, he found a great number of Indian artifacts, and so he decided to have his own museum. The building, I believe, is a work of art. It's done in the Danish fashion, vertical log rather than Lincoln log. It's the 14th of these buildings that he and his son put up here on Washington Island. The ship models with the birch bark sails that are all around the building were one of his many hobbies. Many of these were made while he was assistant lighthouse keeper on Rock Island at Potawatomi Light for 8 years.
Curiosities, Indian arrowheads, wood carvings, replicas of sailing vessels, antique tools, pioneer artifacts. This is a museum unlike any other. And next door is a small log cabin that once belonged to Jacobson. I'm standing on the shores of Little Lake, the only inland lake on Washington Island. It is located just steps away from the Jacobson Museum and the Thorsten Veblen study cabin. Most of the property around Little Lake has been preserved for public enjoyment.
We were able to purchase almost the northern 2/3 of Little Lake over the past 6 years. It had an old cabin on it, and right after we made the purchase, I started getting calls from Norway and Carleton University about the Veblen cabin. And we found out this very famous economist, Thorsten Veblen, had done a lot of his writing out on this property in this little cabin. And they wanted to see if we could partner with them to take it off the property and move it over to the Jacobson Museum, and then put together a whole historic educational piece on Thorsten Veblen.
He idealized the rural, self-motivated and self-supporting. Those were virtues that he saw, and that reflected in his work all the way along. And we think that arose on Washington Island by watching the people who worked hard here. Didn't get a lot of money, but they worked hard and they had great lives. And that's the story that we see in between the lines in his books.
For such a small place, Washington Island has a lot to see and do. Unique opportunities for recreation, education, and exploration that you'll find no place else.
Seavers School was started in 1979. It was started as an idea of a gentleman who retired to Washington Island. His wife was a weaver. Walter designed a weaving loom, and when he started to market it, he needed a name for the business, and he chose his wife Sophie's maiden name, which was Seavers. The students that come each year, and this year's enrollment is at, it's just gone over 450, so we have a very high rate of return. They're adults. They're interested in what we teach, which is fiber arts, so they're either as a beginner or an intermediate artist who wants to learn more about surface design or knitting or weaving. And because we teach a lot of beginner classes, you know, people like to come to learn how. If we had a mission statement for them, it would be something like, come to a beautiful place where you can relax. Doing something nice for yourself is something I think a lot of gals don't take time for, so that's important. And if they belong to a group or something back home where they don't have enough time to quilt or weave or something like that, this is a place that they can do it.
Norse Horse Park is a Scandinavian heritage animal farm, and we focus on heritage vegetables, heritage chickens, heritage sheep, and heritage horses. Norwegian fjords are a pretty ancient breed, at least 4,000 years old.
The Scandinavian countries developed warm bloods so they could put their king on them or their military. These two are Icelandic. They come from the same stallion. In Iceland, this is the only horse that you'll find. This is a Gotland called the Rus horse, R-U-S-S.
There's 3 breeds of horses in Norway. This is one of the 3, and it's called a dole horse. Diversity among Scandinavian animals is largely what we're about. The horses are dramatic and exciting, and the sheep are interesting, and we have chickens and ducks as well from Scandinavia. And this is the notion that these breeds are important to preserve, even though they're not common and they don't serve all the purposes that everyone has for these animals. For us, they're worth noting and paying attention to.
Not for the timid or out of shape, Mountain Park and Lookout Tower offers the best views of the island landscape after you've climbed the 186 steps to the highest point on the island. The island rolls out before your eyes, across agricultural fields, through woods, to the shoreline and beyond, to the islands offshore. Take your time. Enjoy stretching your legs. One of 5 beaches in the world with similar features, Schoolhouse Beach is part of the Niagara Escarpment and sits neatly in a protected harbor. The island's original shipping port, it now provides some of Door County's most excellent swimming. A favorite area for picnics, collecting yourself for the next round of sightseeing, or reading that special book you've been lugging around all week.
I'm Steve Colburn, Artistic Director and Oboist for the Washington Island Music Festival. The festival started initially through our visit to Washington Island.
And he and his wife, Marley Sabo, who was a soprano and an instructor at the Wisconsin Conservatory of Music, visited the island and thought they would like to play some music up here.
I thought, this is kind of fun, this is beautiful and lovely. And our friend met us at the ferry boat and gave us a quick tour of the island. And very, very quickly, I began to feel that I had found what I was looking for. And I began to think about how could we arrange things to spend some more time here. We started talking to a few folks, the head of the bank, the head of the editor of the newspaper, the director of the Art and Nature Center. And then we got really down to the essence of it when the woman who at the time was in charge said, well, this all sounds great, but how much would it cost? I had to kind of think very quickly on my feet. And I said, we'll give 3 concerts of chamber music, we'll do a children's concert, we'll do a lecture discussion, and you can charge whatever you want, and you keep the money, and our fee will be nothing. When I sit down in November to start the process, it usually takes me about 6 to 8 weeks to organize it, and really the hard part is not finding what to play, but finding what to eliminate, because there's so much wonderful music. That's really the task, is to choose the major works that are going to appeal to the musicians and to the audience, and from that you try to find something familiar to them, or at least by a familiar composer or style, and something they've never heard before.
We want people to come up here. We want them to see what we have, and of course spread the word. They have a program they're putting on that is unique to the island. It features a local poet who has passed away, and they are using his poetry. We
suggested to Eric Ewazen that he might want to consider some of Bill Olson's poetry as the text for these choral pieces. And he came up with island songs and landscapes.
And Bill Olson's poetry captured the spirit, and it's a work about basically Washington Island through the seasons. So I enjoyed having that opportunity to write this piece. Hearing my music brought to life like that is thrilling. It's thrilling because composers, a lot of times, it's a solitary profession. You hear it in your ears, you hear the performers play it like that, it's great.
What we love so much is that this is such a special place, and to have the privilege of bringing our family here and to be able to work in depth on music and to create art here is something that, that we just really can't put any kind of value on other than to just say thank you so much to those who make it possible.
People just have to be so in love with music. So in love with playing chamber music together that they want to reserve this time in their summer schedules to come here for 2 weeks and just be devoted to chamber music. The festival has not grown so much in size and scope, but rather in quality. And that's really the kind of growth that I think we're all most interested in.
If you're hungry, Washington Island has a variety of casual restaurants. From slow fast food at a terrific burger and shake spot, to a coffee house that doubles as the Island Community Center, to family-style dining with Door County fish boils, to a Danish-themed open-faced sandwich place, the island has plenty of variety and fine food. Are you interested in spending the night on the island? With over 30 lodging facilities of all varieties, from resorts dating to the late 19th century, the island offers motels, inns, cottages, campgrounds, lodges, and resorts of all descriptions, one sure to fit your needs. Laughing and dancing, yet tears in my eyes, I've watched the northern lights dance in the sky to a simple freedom song. Twisting and turning, yet calm all around. They've made my feet never touch on the ground. Yes, they've made me dance along. Because we'll never have this time to live again. So why not live it up while we can? For there's less time than before, and I don't know how much more, but I know we'll never have this time again. Fresh smell of wood smoke invading my mind makes me remember all the good times that I've spent here with my friends, talking and dreaming of what we could be if we could just find out life's simple key to make it never end. Because we'll never have this time to live again. So why not live it up while we can? For there's less time than before, and I don't know how much more, but I know we'll never have this time again. Because we'll never have this time to live again. So why not live it up while we can? For there's less time than before, and I don't know how much more, but I know we'll never have this time again. People, for whatever reason, I've noticed this up here maybe more than the county, that people come up here, they're more willing, maybe because of they're just more willing to open up and talk about their life. I've found that they love to sit, and pretty soon the circle of chairs expand and just encompass people that are sitting there, and if they want to be involved or contribute in conversation, they're welcome. And I've not seen this as much in the county, nothing personal, but I think this is just very cool. And by the way, if you're wondering what this beautiful building is here in the background or during the song that I sang, this is the boathouse on Rock Island State Park. I hope you'll come and contribute to the pond of life here. We need some fresh water, and I think you would get something very rewarding back out of it also. Hope to see you here. Thanks for coming with today. I hope this will inspire you to come to the island and experience its magic firsthand. See you soon.